And then each color represents the word to the left and the word to the right, looking for similar phrases that could be minted in an agreement. We just really don't have enough licenses yet to come up with anything, but we're working on our methods and building our collection with the hopes that we can. Here's a better way to look at this close up. So frequency of the term most to least, that's the color coding. And so here are some of the sentences that we're finding over and over again across the collection. I really can't make any claims, as I said, what this really says yet, but the fact that we're finding some similar phrases may be something that's helpful. So, to give you, I'm going to move on to like the system now, a little bit of what you might, where does this all lead to in the data sharing agreement and the data hub. So if you can envision, again, Twitter and MIT, let's get the agreement, or IMS Health and Drexel University, yes, let's share that data. Coming to the table, and instead of paying those lawyers all that money, logging into a system and saying, this is what we want. We want to share data, and yes, we want controls, and we want usage rights, and we want warranties, and so forth. And having some kind of phrase minted, that would be really nice. That would help us. And so another exercise we've done is we've looked at agreement clauses, and the color coding I showed you, we're hoping can inform this kind of exercise better. But right now, we really did this brainstorming on the right where we thought about what was the technical feature that would have to be on the left. And so, for instance, when we thought about duration of use, we knew that the technical feature has to be expiration. And when we thought of, this idea of tracking and access and copying, we need to pay attention to the technical features in logging and auditing. So let's see. Another one here is usage rights and publication and copying, provenance and fingerprinting. And so this was another team exercise, brainstorming along with the ontology work that can inform our work on the system. Another area that we're working in, and this comes out more of the partners at Brown University, they're handling the de-identification. There are a lot of algorithms out there, and they're experts. And the folks at MIT are handling anonymization algorithms to put into the system. And so, but we all work together. So in the US, we have HIPAA and FERPA, which are legal policies about rights and sharing personal information. And so this is some of the work where we have thought about, it's not just sharing the data, it's the columns in the data that have to be de-identified and anonymized so that research can take place. So, and here's just one of the kinds of, where you might have an interactive system and I'll say, check out what you need to be de-identified. All right, so a sneak peek at the system, and I'm getting to the digital libraries discussion in a few, and this is a little hard on the eyes, but it does show that we are prototyping. So we're moving forward on multiple fronts, and this is privacy and protection. So this lays on top of that data hub system that's going to become data share. So the person comes and they want FERPA and they want PII removed. So it's a little bit more real than that slide I showed you where you were checking boxes. And here you can identify collaborators and permissions, that you want in the database, such as select and update and so forth. So individual users could be set different permissions in working with the data. Another is removing columns and that are needing to be removed because of the agreement between the agency. And I think that is what's happening up there. This is the same as the other one, but license, to apply the license. Once you figure it out, you can apply the license. So I think I've given you a taste of where some work is moving forward in this area, and I'd like to move on now to the last part of this presentation, which is thinking about implications for digital libraries, and hopefully you're thinking about it too, because I'd like to hear from people. And so implications for digital libraries. Well, I'm biased because of the research I do and the involvement of metadata, but I think throughout our field, we are always concerned about standards and standards that can be reused and shared. So I think that this is something that we are good at in the digital library and larger information library science community. Sometimes I think we're too good at it, and you may have seen this, some version of this comic before. You know, the good thing about standards is there's so many of them. So we are good at it, but we're also overkill. And it's not just our community. Other communities do get into the standards, and there is a whole psychology there about, well, you know, I don't want to use your standard, not invent it. It doesn't answer my problem all the way, so I have to invent my own. And that happens over and over again. So we have competing standards that address the same things. You know, there is this why reinvent the wheel, but if you look at the wheel, this wheel maybe needs some improvement today. So finding the right way to look at standards that exist that are useful and where we actually need to move forward is something where I think our community has something really important to offer. And so in our effort, I really steered our team in our proposal, and this actually helped us get our support, which is going backwards first. Like, let's not create a new standard for this project. We're doing the mining, we're looking at the ontology, but let's also at the same time look at all the good work that's been done in standards, and then this is from a metadata perspective, but in helping repositories and data sharing and so forth. And so this is a little table, and it might be hard to read all the different acronyms, but some of the standards that are out there, like schema.org in identifying people, or METS and premise for preservation, electronic health record standards. So it's clustered under publication and domain discovery, licensing and use, and lifecycle management, things coming out of the World Wide Web Consortium, such as the Prof model. And how do these standards that exist, that come out of, I want to say, our community, a lot of us have been involved in these kinds of things or are aware of them, help what we're trying to do in this more restricted environment. And so this has been something else that we are moving forward on, and I have I mentioned Sam Grabus, but I have some other students working on this as well. And here's more of an up-close, just a selection of some of the standards that we're pulling from and that we're not wanting to reinvent the wheel. And so this work has to continue. And here's another one about rights management and looking at activities. And then also, the Research Data Alliance is a global community that has a group called the Legal Interoperability Group. And so we're linked into them. And there's also a Research Data Alliance national NISO privacy group, and we're connecting with them. So we don't reinvent the wheel. And this is really important to keep this part up. There's another area where I think implications for digital libraries, and I want to say that it's never one size fits all. If we think about physical libraries, there are classes or types of libraries. There's academic, there's public, there's special libraries, right? They're not, and then there's law libraries, you know, specific types. But they're not all the same. And so thinking about data sharing environments or repositories, they're not all the same. And this has come out, this framework has come out of a group called Force 11. And I'm curious, has anybody here ever heard of Force 11? Just 1, 2 people. Force 11 is a group that, it's an international group that deals with data citation and other kinds of standards. And they've come up with this framework called FAIR. But FAIR doesn't necessarily mean open, right? So FAIR stands for findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And you can think about these principles in one of those environments where there's sharing of sensitive information or private information, such as the genomics cluster I talked about, or FICO. They actually pass the FAIR test. And this framework, the people in Force 11 who are very involved in citation, data citation standards, it's very heavily populated by people who've been involved in the digital library and scholarly communications community, which we connect with. So this is something to also be aware of. So I think areas in terms of standards and frameworks are where there's implications for digital libraries and where we can contribute to this area of data sharing. A few more bullet points that I have brainstormed on is, so I already said the never one size fits all, but housing data and protecting data when, I mean, we're working on building a system. Our system is not the only system in town, but when these systems, such as the data hub or data share gets implemented or other people that are addressing that, I think us as coming from the field of information and library science have experience in housing and protecting assets, digital assets, of which data is part of. And so that is one area. Licenses that reach over materials, so agreements is one area. I put up here longevity of metadata because I'm familiar with the work that Sugimoto has led here in describing data and the metadata that is important to it over time. So I think this is an area, and I am going to put you on the spot in a few minutes. I'm curious what people think might be other implications. I mentioned early on the whole social science, behavioral aspect. Maybe that's another area. So just to continue on a few more minutes, really getting to the end here. So I mentioned our workshop that we had that helped us launch our activity and moving forward with collecting the data sharing agreements. And we have a report on that workshop, and I put it into our institutional repository. And when I put it in, I felt like I had to sign my life away. It's okay because there was nothing in there that was confidential. But when I signed the form for the repository, you know, I got this statement back, right? By agreeing to submitting this license, you, the authors, copyright, will grant to Drexel University non-exclusive rights to reproduce, translate, distribute. They own it now. I have nothing to do with this report. They could do whatever they want. That is not going to work for this other problem that we're trying to solve. And so we need to work on this, and there's a role for us if we want to do what we do. And that is, you know, help address grand world challenges with information, archive it, protect it, make it accessible to people, findable, reusable, all those kinds of things. And so I'm going to wrap up with some of the conclusions and next steps. And that is, first of all, yes, work is underway. it's been a lot of heavy lifting to get the project going. You know, the mining of the agreements or the licenses, whatever you want to call them, we've had some really interesting semantic discussions in our team about, is this an agreement, is it a license, is it a contract? So maybe we're going to figure that one out. But we at least have found some consistency and similarities amongst the agreements that are successful. And to my delight, metadata has really shown up as an important part of this project. We have infrastructure to build on. We have this data hub system. We've made progress with prototyping the system. We are continuing to collect agreements, and I put out that call, so I'll say it again. If you have agreements that you can share, we're happy to take them. We will make them secure. And we are community building, particularly within the Global Research Data Alliance. We're sort of multi-pronged way, and we're addressing it because it's on a, you know, U.S. national level because of the funding, but we clearly recognize that this is global. And I said already, a lot of organizations are global. And that's where the connecting internationally comes in, and so it's a pleasure and an honor to be able to share this with you as an international audience. So we do have this other site where we are making it beyond just the initial project, where we are trying to, we are developing, we've developed a data sharing 101 to help with the cultural shift. We are going to put up, we have some examples of successful agreements. So I said when we got them for our research, got them in different ways where people were saying don't tell anybody, to everything blacked out, to ones like I don't care. We have put some of the ones that we're allowed to share on the web so other people can see. The existing standards that are relevant, we've done some work. So this is an ongoing project where we will continue beyond the spoke work. This is more of the larger data sharing group, and be happy to hear from anyone about that. And so I am wrapping up here. I'd like to acknowledge team members. I've highlighted the Metadata Research Center folks because I work, you know, with them on a daily basis. But we are a team. This is really a team effort. And so acknowledging the full team here is important. And just even, so I listed the computer scientists at Brown and MIT, but just to point out, we also have a lawyer on our project. So very, very important. And we have some other lawyers that want to actually engage with us. So I think we're hitting on something. And wow, that wraps up where I wanted to be. We have a bit of time, and so I am ready for questions, and I would really like to hear from people if they have some other ideas or thoughts, work you're engaged with, and what might be other implications for digital libraries or this community that I haven't touched on or that I've touched on and you'd like to say more about it. So thank you very much.
Hi, Jen. Thank you very much. This is indeed sort of very interesting, and I know I'm familiar with your work. Just two quick comments. I'll first talk about the last bit of your talk, what's the implications for digital libraries. I would say, and this is what wherever I go and I talk, this is very much at the core of digital libraries. This is very much at the core of what we do. Because if you look at it, so far, what we have done is only managing the end product of the scholarly communication process, which is the end product is the articles, books, journals, etc. But the research process starts many months and years before that, right from thinking about the research and collecting data and all the policies and so on. So if we really want to make a contribution in this knowledge creation process, knowledge management process, entire life cycle, then this is where we should be. So this is very much at the core of digital libraries and at each stage of this. Now coming back to the other part of your presentation, which is particularly sort of, on the governance side, like sharing research data. Now, one thing I can probably sort of, advise you, or maybe I can be part of it later, is that every university in Britain in 2015 had to sign an agreement with the government that if any research that is done on the university premises, the data will be made available for public access for at least 10 years. So every university has prepared an officially available research data management policy, right? Now, that's only one part of the story. There is no plan yet, and I know because I sit at my university steering committee for research data management working group, they call, and we do not really have a plan because now we are actually exactly what we are saying, we are fighting with our legal team. So what will be interesting to see actually, and this is where I probably can be, can contribute, is compare the research data management policy and also the research ethics. And both these documents are available publicly for every university. So it is possible to compare them and find out where the actual gap is. And that is where we probably can contribute, your team can contribute.
Thank you. Yeah, very much. So the same exists in the US, where not every university, but different universities have this policy, but at the federal level. If you have NSF funding or NIH funding, you better say what you're going to do with your data. There are no NSF police. There are no NIH police making sure people are doing it and people get away with it. But I think your point about a gap analysis is really a good thing to sort of push on, because Twitter or a health agency, a pharmaceutical company, GSK, I'm working with them, there is no way they're going to put their data in our university repository. But do they want to work with us? Do they want to work with our visualization experts or our semantic web people? You bet. They know we have something to offer, and they don't have that technical expertise. So how do we address it? And the question is, I think, what can we learn from where we've been successful in the open source? And I think your open data, the lifecycle management that we've been working on for the last 10 years and has incredible implications. So thank you, and look forward to continuing and also thinking about it on a more international scale is important. I saw Holly had her hand in Shigeo, and yeah, so.
First off, thanks for the presentation. Very good to see everything that you're doing at Drexel since moving the Metadata Research Center when I studied with you. Yeah. Secondly, so